This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. And today, here on the Hannibal TV, I have a follow-up interview from his career interview last year with former WWE superstar, former TNA superstar. He's wrestled in Japan, Mexico, pretty much everywhere, but AEW. Val Venis, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, my friend. I'm doing well.
And you were just telling me about the effect of this lockdown on the economy. Here, where I am in Canada, they have the gym shut down, but the alcohol stores are still open, which I find a little unusual.
Yeah, it's something I don't understand. All of our gyms are shut down here in Arizona as well. Restaurants are closed. Enterprises like Dunkin' Donuts, for example, they're still serving coffee and donuts, but their dining rooms are closed. I've never seen anything like this. It's incredible. It's amazing to see what fear-mongering campaigns can do to humans within society. It's amazing to see this happen.
And it seems like anyone that doesn't just completely conform to the government or anyone that like has an issue with their freedom being taken away, they immediately get labeled with, well, I guess you don't care about all the people dying and so forth. But it's my understanding that a lot of people that are dying actually have underlying health conditions. In fact, the vast majority, I believe.
Right. And as soon as you mentioned that fact, that COVID-19 affects the majority of the people with already underlying conditions, the moment you mention that fact, all of a sudden, you don't care about the old people. And it's insanity. Basically, what you're describing is something that happens every single year. It's flu season, folks. The difference, I think, this time, or I believe this time, is the fact that we have something else going on in society, and it's something big and it's something huge. And a lot of people are completely blind to it because both the central banking cartel and their hacks in government and their hacks in media are colluding to keep what is actually happening, not just in America, but around the globe, hidden by distracting with what is essentially just a bad flu virus. This idea that we're going to shut down an entire global economy because of a bad flu season is insanity. What are we going to do? Shut it down every year? I mean, we had 80,000 people die worldwide, or just in America, just in America in 2018 from the flu virus, and we didn't shut down the economy for that. Government and the central banking cartel, I believe strongly, is using their propaganda arms in mainstream media to frighten, distract, and lock down the human population. And you started to see a rise up in Hong Kong, for example, against the communist movement there. And where's that protest gone now? It's completely vanished from the airways. And I think they're trying to keep people separated, keep people afraid from being close together so we don't go up and start protesting when you see an event happen in government that's going to completely change the world. And that's all being distracted by the coronavirus.
And I've been researching it, and there hasn't been a single case worldwide of a single professional wrestler catching this virus. So I find that very interesting considering how many of us there are all around the world in all these different countries.
Right. I agree with you. And who knows, maybe some of them have, but it passes in and out of them like a flu. And some people don't get any kind of symptoms. They literally carry it. Their immune system has already had the antibodies to fight off the flu. They never get any symptoms and don't even realize they're sick. It's like you said, it goes back to people with underlying conditions, AIDS patients, cancer patients, some elderly. Those are the people that need to be concerned. But it's nothing out of the ordinary. Those people should be concerned every single year.
Is your shoot job closed down there? Because I know mine is here. Are you getting any like
No,
regular pay?
yeah, no. Fortunately, our company's still going, Health for Life dispensaries, and we have made some alterations, and is to help the patients feel a little more comfortable because everybody's running scared right now. So we only allow 3 into the lobby at one time. We closed down the inner flower shop where people would come in and they would buy their product. They actually have to go online or call in and order, and we bag up the order, get it all ready for them, and then they'll come in one at a time into the lobby and pay for it, which kind of takes away from what I believe to be a great cannabis culture. But it is what it is. I mean, that's how people feel at least safe enough to do business. And it's sad. It's sad what the government and mainstream media has done to people's minds, man. They've completely lost their biscuits.
Are you on Kane's side? I know he's said that publicly as the mayor of Knoxville that he feels that they're going overboard. Are you on his side politically in general? I know he's a libertarian.
Yeah, Kane and I used to discuss politics quite a bit back in the day. And yeah, I'm very much on a similar page to Kane. Um, I've gone even further than just being a libertarian. I've gone all the way to, becoming an anarchist. He still has a belief in government, a very limited belief in government. And whereas I do not. I do not have any belief in government. And I have, history's riddled with facts that I can stack up one after another as to why no government is good for private sector humans on any level. But Kane's definitely on a very limited government side of things. And I think he's going to do some great things for Knoxville because statism has affected, parts of Tennessee as well.
So, what would you do if you had like a political position and this situation was going on? What would you suggest? Just that the people that are susceptible to it remain isolated and everyone have their own freedom, whether they want to go out or not, or what would it be?
I would advocate that government are not medical professionals. And they are beholden to big drug companies that want to sell you vaccines and all their little cures. And government has a history of creating problems and then coming around the front side and offering solutions to those problems. And it always seems to be that their solutions come from these big corporations that stand to make billions. And I see the same thing happening here. If I were in government, which I'd never be, because I'd never become part of a freaking criminal enterprise. But if I ever were, I would tell people, hey, listen, I'm here to build your roads. I'm here to protect your right to bear arms. I'm here to protect your right to the health care of your choice. Now, every human being's got a brain in their head. They can start using that brain and saying, hey, I want to go and interview doctors that can give me medical advice for myself and my family. And I would encourage people to do that. Get out there. Go interview doctors, find the ones that you feel most comfortable with, create a relationship with them, and listen to what they say. They're the experts. And I think when we leave it to these big corporations that pay enormous amounts of money to have lobbyists lobby in Washington, we should not be trusting those people at all. It should be a personal relationship between the patient and the doctors. And I don't think government has any business being in between that relationship at all.
And when they first started locking us down here in Canada, they put out a story that the Prime Minister here, Justin Trudeau's wife, caught the virus. Do you believe that that was a political thing, or do you think she actually had it? And
I think if she had it, she got the flu. Do I think it's a political thing and she didn't have anything? I'd say that's a high possibility. I mean, these guys, let's explain exactly what a politician is. Politicians are liars, thieves, fraudsters, manipulators, rapists, and ultimately, there's a lot of them out there that are cold hard murderers. And so, do I believe anything Justin Trudeau says or any politician? Absolutely not. They're scumbags. I don't think anybody in government that's at his level could hold down a meaningful job in the private sector if their lives depended on it. I really don't. I think these people, let's face it, if you ever listen to Justin Trudeau speak, the guy's, yeah, he's missing a few marbles. And but he is a master at playing on the emotions of people that don't think for themselves and only listen to what a criminal is saying to them. And they believe in that criminal because we voted for them and because they're government. It's like these guys are human beings and they're of the criminal persuasion, and you're listening to them. We need to stop listening to politicians and tell them to go fill the potholes that they keep forgetting to fill. It's ridiculous for politicians to be locking human beings down and saying 6 feet, 6 feet. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I'm sorry. I'm a free person. If I feel comfortable enough to walk over to my neighbors and he feels comfortable enough to sit there and talk to me face to face, that's between him and I. Government has no business coming in there and saying, like down here in Arizona, Governor Ducey announced that if they see people violating that 6 foot rule, that their cops can walk up to them and suggest, hey, you guys need to follow the rules. And if they refuse to follow the police officers' diktats, which are just politicians' diktats, the police officer is just a heavy for the politician. If they refuse to follow that 6 foot rule, they can then issue or get arrested and get fined for $2,500 and face up to 6 months in jail. Insanity, what this world's come to.
And
Insanity.
meanwhile, they're letting criminals out of jail.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's literally they're trying to get. I think they're trying to get the human population more accustomed to being ruled over and being controlled, because that's what they're doing. They're cranking up the ratchets. I mean, when I'm talking about a big event that's about to happen, that I believe COVID is just one of the pandemics that's distracting from it, is the collapse of the U.S. dollar. And I think that's on the horizon. I think it's already begun. And, with them, when you collapse that U.S. dollar, government is going to scramble to be the solution to what is clearly a problem with the U.S. dollar. And that solution, I believe, will eventually be a one world currency, all controlled by the central banking cartel. And it's insane where society seems to be going.
Well, at least the US dollar is a lot better than the Canadian dollar these days. I don't know if you have any idea how bad it is.
Yeah, the Canadian dollar is collapsing as well, but you got to remember the Canadian dollar, they've been printing a lot of money for a lot less people. America is actually falling quite hard, but when you get both of them falling at the same level, there's always that same or relatively same distance between the Canadian dollar and the US dollar, even though both of them are taking a nosedive. And the reality is you're starting to see gold start to climb in price. You're starting to see silver barely start to climb in price. I figured we'd see a little more deflation with gold and silver before we break out into hyperinflation. But hyperinflation's coming. And I don't think people understand and it's a lack of real history in public schools now. People don't really understand how devastating a dollar collapse is or a currency collapse. And just to give you a very simple example, society, the humans living in that particular society that experiences a currency collapse suffers greatly. Weimar Germany is a prime example. They were printing money so fast to try and pay off all the reparations to all the European nations. They broke out into hyperinflation. What does that mean? Well, April 1919, it was 4.2 German marks to one US dollar. 5 years later, not even 5 years later, almost 5 years later, April 1923, it was 4.72 trillion marks. 4.72 trillion marks to one US dollar. The Germans lost everything, and ultimately that's what brought Hitler to power. Is everybody was looking for a solution in a different government. And so they put all their faith into Hitler, and of course we saw where that led. Putting faith in government, believing in them, and obeying them is the worst thing the human population can do right now. Yet they're doing it. They're doing it, and they'll become staunch supporters of government rule. 6 feet rule. We're exercising the 6 feet rule. I hear it all day long. It's insanity.
My own parents wouldn't break that rule with me, so that's pretty sad.
Right? It's crazy. This is literally putting fear and instilling fear into the human population just so you can exercise your own beliefs in what should be controlled in human society. And that's, what else would you call that besides sociopathic? I mean, in reality, to want to control and rule over other human beings outside of an absolute self-defense of an invasion or something like that. It's sociopathic in nature, and every politician is a sociopath on what I believe to be a very high level.
Now, I've got a bunch of political questions that I'll finish off with, but I'll get into the wrestling related ones for the wrestling fans. There was a fan that wanted me to ask you the last year when I did the interview with you, you said you had a goal of getting down to 210 pounds. Did you reach that goal?
No, I'm still hovering around the 220, 222 mark right now. I am going to have to get my left knee fixed. I had a little torn ligament in there, and I've had a few issues with it now. When I started running, I had a few issues with it that, I don't want to do some damage to it. So I'm going to get that ligament fixed, and then we're going to go ahead and continue on with it and get down to 210.
Now, how big were you in your prime? Because a lot of people, we know how people are on the internet are commenting that you look sick and so forth, but I actually saw you in person. You had your six pack last time. You're 6'4", so you look jacked in person. You got the veins coming out. Just what's the difference in your weight now compared to then, and do you consider yourself healthier now?
Um, Not necessarily healthier. I'm just kind of maintaining until I can get my knee repaired here. But I really haven't changed all that much. It's one of those things where I feel great. I feel, quick. I feel like I got some really good wind to me. Cardio. I'm doing a lot more cardio the last few years than I did when I was wrestling, because wrestling was my cardio basically. I would do maybe a half hour of cardio before my weight session, but now I'm doing an hour and a half to almost 2.5 hours of cardio when I'm in the gym, and the gym's open and I can use a freaking pre-core machine.
Yeah. At least you don't have to deal with snow if you want to do cardio outside there, like you do here still.
Right?
Uh,
You guys still got snow up there?
yeah, in Ottawa, anyways, we still got snow. It's slowly going away, but it's
Uh,
awfully slippery out there if you try and run.
oh, I bet it is.
Now, you made the news everywhere. I don't know if it was a month or two ago when they had the transgender wrestler Nyla Rose win the AEW Women's Championship. Uh, we heard a lot about Cody Rhodes' side of it and Dustin Rhodes' side of it. Could you give us your side of it?
Yeah, I shared my opinion online. I guess you're not allowed to share your opinion online. I think Cody Rhodes is a smart guy. I always assumed he was a smart guy. Um, but I think he's getting sucked into this social justice warrior BS. It's a lot of people, humans are going to be human. You're always going to have those people that will take my words out of context and will just run with whatever they feel instead of what the facts are. And I didn't knock Nyla Rose. Even Jim Ross, I guess, apparently somebody was telling me that Jim Ross, uh, said I was knocking Nyla Rose. I never knocked Nyla Rose. I trolled using Nyla Rose's name after everybody flipped out, but I didn't knock Nyla Rose. I knocked the booking of Nyla Rose. And I think, when you're in business, your business is to make money. You make money by giving the fans something that they want, need, or desire. And you're always going to have your small little vocal crowd of insane social justice warriors. Those are all the same people that are maintaining a 6-foot social distance because they've been indoctrinated to believe that's what you need to do, and you're a criminal if you don't. It's insanity. But a lot of these social justice warriors, took it to heart. They came after me saying I was knocking Nyla Rose. I wasn't knocking Nyla Rose. I was knocking the booking of Nyla Rose, and I still knock the booking of Nyla Rose. There's what I believe to be in society a nature to humans. There's natural tendencies built into humans, and when you take programming, you take entertainment, and you try to manipulate and condition uh, the human population against something that is natural to you win over some. You win over some that say, we'll base all of their forward motion on that particular storyline on feelings and emotions rather than fact or logic. You know, they made a man. This is what AEW did. I don't know who wrote this, but whoever did needs to get their head examined. They took Nyla Rose, who the majority of wrestling fans, they know that that's a transgender. They know it. It's a fact. It's a fact of life. And instead of using a true fact of life and running with it, I mean, they decided to turn around and say, no, 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 let's ignore that. We're going to ignore that because it's socially acceptable to have transgenders in society. Okay, I'm down with that, but it's still a transgender that's going into a woman's sport. If we're talking about, shoot, right? You're seeing a transgender biological male go into a woman's sport. Where's the fairness in this? If you're talking about reality and you want to suspend my sense of reality for 2 hours when I'm watching the programming, now I have to sit back and work and force myself to ignore the fact that that's a woman that's in the or a man in a woman's division. And when you got to make the fans work to ignore some form of reality in order to follow along with your storyline, you just don't cater to the majority of wrestling fans. And I'm sorry to say that, but you don't. How would I have booked Nyla Rose? I would have more booked Nyla Rose as this is a transgender. She wants her rights. She wants to compete against women. And Cody should have said, you can't. I understand we support your change to go from man to woman, but you can't compete against women because you're still biologically a man, and nothing's ever going to change that. And then have Nyla Rose go out, get her lawyers. They have a big lawsuit against Cody Rhodes. And then Cody Rhodes is forced to allow Nyla Rose to compete against women. And just have her destroy the women. You'd have the biggest, it would be a huge amount of heelism for Nyla Rose. But instead of actually playing on something that is fact and making money with it, which ultimately benefits everybody. It benefits the company. It benefits Nyla Rose. It benefits all the rest of the boys because you're putting more asses in the seats. When you can take something that's real and play it up. No, they don't do that. The social justice warriors say, no, that's too offensive. Let's push that aside and let's just never mention that Nyla Rose is a transgender. It's insanity. Never mention she's a transgender, like we're stupid or something. It's just stupid. The booking of Nyla Rose is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I mean, I love Jim Ross. He's one of the best commentators in the world. But it's when I hear Jim Ross say or talk about Nyla Rose in she and her, it just doesn't sit right, man. It's hard to believe. He's a fully grown man and he's catering to the social justice warriors that don't want their feelings hurt. And I'm not down with that, man. I'm just not. It's just the way it is. I think they're shooting Nyla Rose's bank account in the foot. They're shooting the company in the foot. They're shooting all the rest of the boys in the foot too, just for their own social justice desires. It's crazy.
Well, they haven't seen too much of an increase in their ratings. They've actually gone down. They haven't really gained any viewers since they started. So I guess it's not catching on too much. But for the people that allege that you were homophobic because you disagree with the transgender wrestling, the females, the way they presented it, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, these social justice warriors have no clue what being transphobic really means. I don't hate anybody. I would go smoke a doobie with Nyla Rose and I'd pick her brain and see what makes her tick. I'd love to do that. I don't hate Nyla Rose, but they'll still call you transphobic because saying that word, regardless of what it means, makes them feel good. They're entitled to feel good all the time, these people. And if saying something that's completely insane, like Val Venis, you're transphobic, if that makes them feel better, okay, run with it, pansy boy. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things where they don't even understand what transphobic means. Transphobic is where you hate someone because of their life choices. I don't hate Nyla Rose. I've never hated Nyla Rose. There's nothing I hate about Nyla Rose. I do not agree with the booking of Nyla Rose. I think it's you're short-sighted when you're ignoring what you could factually use to make a lot of money with, just because you don't want to offend anyone's feelings. What the hell happened to wrestling? I thought wrestling offended people. It's crazy.
That's exactly one of the things that I think is wrong with wrestling, that it's so PC now and like
Oh, it's crazy.
non-offensive. And MMA's gone the other way. Like they're way more popular, and it's what wrestling used to be. And we're the fake stuff, but we have to be so like by the book. It's unfortunate, in my
It,
opinion. But
it really is, and I got to tell you, this new easily offended social justice warrior world, it's a sad world, man. You got to be careful what you say because somebody will flip out because they're offended, and it's uh it's a sad world to live in. Like you got to cross your T's and dot your I's every step you take. It's not like it was back in the day where you could take something that was a minor issue backstage, and then two wrestlers would be like, "Hey, man, you and I got an issue with that. Why don't we take this on the road?" And I mean, when people know something's happening, and you get a team of guys that make that real little thing happen and blow that real thing up into something that's huge, the fans can bite into it. But when you ignore reality and push it aside and just create these storylines, don't mention that she's a biological man. Let's just make everybody believe she's a woman, and she's a woman with the woman's title, and we'll promote her like a woman too. They should be promoting her like a biological man that just robbed the women's division of the women's championship. And but that hurts people's feelings, right? And let's face it, there are high school kids and their families all over America. One of the most prominent ones in Connecticut right now that is suing the school board for allowing transgenders to compete in track and field in their district, and it cost some girls that were the top real women in their track and field divisions. It cost them scholarships. That's an issue. Like, I'm sorry, that's a real life issue. I wonder. I would like to interview them one day, and I wonder what their thoughts would be on Cody Rhodes or whoever else is, handling Nyla Rose, and completely ignoring the fact that she's a biological male winning a women's title. I wonder what those girls in Connecticut would say about that.
and Cody Rhodes actually took some personal shots at you. He said you were the Disco Inferno of the WWE. He doesn't know if anyone remembers you. He's disappointed because you don't think you mean the things you put in writing. You're trying to just get a booking, and he said they're not going to book you anywhere near them. What do you have to say about those shots he took?
Well, first of all, Cody Rhodes doesn't know what he's talking about. He's saying I said all these horrible things about Nyla Rose. I'd like him to sit down, go through everything I've posted, and I've deleted none of it, and specifically point out what he thinks is so awful that I said about Nyla Rose. I didn't say anything awful about Nyla Rose. That's number one. Number two, he said he's vice president of that company. He says I'm banned from AEW. If I ever decided to come back to pro wrestling, I can promise you this, he would not turn me away. I'm the guy that can come in there and make him money. That's if he ever decided he wanted to make money. But I don't do business with companies that leave money on the table by catering to some social justice warriors. So he can ban me all he wants. I'm just still going to go to work every day and serve some of the finest bud in this entire state of Arizona to some of the finest and most enlightened patients in the entire state of Arizona.
And I actually heard Bruce Pritchard say today, he didn't say this today, but I heard his interview today. He's the current head writer for SmackDown. And he said, unquestionably, you're going to be in the WWE Hall of Fame one day. So to try and make it like you have no accomplishments in wrestling, I thought that was a little low because you were one of the top stars of the Attitude Era. I think you were actually on the highest rated Raw of all time, too. Weren't you in a feature match?
I
Um,
believe that. Yeah, I believe that's true. I was there during a time when wrestling was exploding, and it was really incredible time to be a part of that. As far as me being the Disco Inferno of Raw. I mean, I don't know. I found personally Disco Inferno to be quite entertaining and quite a good talent too. And so I don't know if he was trying to insult me with that or what he was trying to do, but if he was trying to insult me with "you're the Disco Inferno of the WWE," I'm like, okay, I had some good times watching that son of a bitch wrestle. I thought he was really good entertainment, and I don't know what's in Cody's mind, man. It feels to me like wrestling is just becoming infested with these easily offended social justice warriors that really don't have a clue, and they leave money on the table left, right, and center. And they do that by catering to their little social justice clique, and it's insanity to me. And AEW, I hope they do well. Um, but when I look at just some of the stuff that they're promoting, there's some really good content on there with the wrestlers. But when I take a look at what their overall vision is, I can't tell you what it is. I don't. There's like a bunch of different visions that I see kind of coming up in that company, but I don't know what the overall vision for that company is. It's almost like you have too many heads pulling that company in different directions, which was what I saw in TNA. It's what I witnessed from the outside in WCW. And it seems to me like they're just there's no one solid person on top that says this is my vision. You get all the talent, all the producers, everybody in the company to fall in behind and help reach that one vision for the company. And if you can't, produce and help to reach that vision of the company, you got to step off the train. And I don't see that happening in AEW. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not there. I don't know what's going on backstage. But I can tell you from just watching stuff from the front, it doesn't appear there's a solid vision for the company right now.
Now, Dustin Rhodes also had some negative things to say about you. I won't get into everyone's.
Dustin said negative things about me.
Oh, yeah, because I guess his son is a transgender. So he was particularly upset. But you had a good relationship with him prior to this, right?
Oh yeah, I love Dustin. Dustin's great. He's fantastic, man. He's one of my favorite guys to wrestle. Um, he was always a lot of fun. We had some fun matches. And like I said, I'm not knocking transgenders. I never have. I'm an anarchist. You want to be a transgender? I'll be the guy that will stand up in front of government when they try to make it illegal for you to be a transgender. But when I take a look at a company that I think's got a very good opportunity to compete successfully against WWE, especially when you look at the finances that are backing that company, and then you see them catering to the social justice crowd with social justice approved content. You're leaving money on the table, and you're not just leaving a little bit of money; you're leaving a boatload of money, and that's it's sad to watch that happen because it's you can be the social justice warrior all you want, but when you're cutting your paycheck in a quarter of what you could have had, you're not doing yourself any favor.
Now, when you worked with Dustin in WWE, you were doing an angle with his ex-wife now, Terry Runnels. Was that awkward at all, or because I guess they ended up getting divorced shortly after that, or was it all very professional?
No, it was all very professional. I enjoyed working with Terry. It was fun. I was in that mode at the time where, all I wanted to do was work and produce content for the fans to watch and enjoy. And so anything outside of that wasn't even in my mind. I was very tunnel vision back then. And, I enjoyed my whole time there. I worked with Dustin quite a bit. And I think we put on some pretty good shows. And, it's sad that they come out and they take my opinions that I share online and then take it so far as to say I said awful things about Nyla Rose and blah 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 blah, and it's craziness. It's craziness. I'm against leaving money on the table, and I think catering to social justice warriors leaves a boatload of money on the table.
Now, I didn't see this post, but Rene Dupree told me to ask you about this. He said, I guess you made a post one day about a chair shot Triple H gave you that was a little dangerous or something like that.
Yeah, it was on Raw, I believe, and it was one of those things where it caught me just in that right spot, and I went out. I'm guessing I was out for maybe a second or 2 seconds, maybe three. I don't know. All I remember at that point in time was opening my eyes, and this is what I remember specifically because it was so, I guess, frightening. When you open your eyes and you're looking up at the lights and you don't know your own name, You see all these people up in the stands all around you. You don't know where you are or what you're doing. It takes a good 3 to 4, maybe 5 seconds for all those marbles to come back together, and you go, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of a match. And I remember just trying to think, looking around, going, what the heck, where am I? What am I doing? And that's a scary moment. I don't know. I'm assuming you've been knocked out before. Am I correct?
I've seen stars, but luckily not been knocked out. But I've had the stars in my
Yeah.
vision, and I've had concussions.
And did it frighten you? Was that something that kind of rattled your soul a little bit?
It was in my younger days, so I didn't really think about it that much, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of getting knocked out. And it's scary. It's scary when you wake up and you don't know what even your own name is or what you're doing there for a few seconds. And yeah, it was one of those things where I don't know what the time frame was. I'm assuming it was 2 or 3 seconds that I was out cold. But when I came to, it took another maybe 3, 4 seconds, maybe 5 seconds to really understand. Oh yeah, I'm in a match. I got to finish this match. But within those few seconds, it felt like an eternity. And it's scary, man. Concussions are scary. I'm not a big fan of concussions at all.
So was that just a matter of it just hit you in the wrong place? It was nobody's fault. You didn't get your hand up.
Yeah, it wasn't really anybody's fault. He hit me flat with the chair. It did come a little bit on the hard side, but I've been hit harder and never got knocked out like that. That just seemed to hit me in that one little sweet spot, I guess. And the next thing I know, I open my eyes wondering what my own name is. And yeah, not a good memory, that's for sure. I had one pupil dilated really big and the other one dilated really small for a long, long time.
Now, I heard that you were one of the big stars of the Dory Funk Jr. camps. I heard Bruce Pritchard say this on a podcast. You're one of the big standouts. What are your memories of those camps? Those were before the development days where they'd have all like the top indie stars do these before getting signed.
Yeah, it was being part of that first camp was pretty amazing. It was kind of surreal. I'd already been in England for a while, been to Arkansas for a while, spent some years in Puerto Rico. Um, at the time, I was just finishing up in Mexico, and they flew me up to Connecticut, and I started doing the camp, and so now I'm in the belly of the beast. I'm in the television studios in WWE every day. We're doing our thing in the ring. We're training. We're videotaping. We're doing all these things, and it was really, really good experience. It was surreal, but at the same time, I had all the novelty of WWE for me at that time was not waning, but I was very, very happy wrestling in Japan for All Japan Pro Wrestling at the time. I started there a couple of times, and I really enjoyed that wrestling. So before Japan, my main goal was to at least wrestle in Japan and get that under my belt, and then get to the big stage with WWE. But I fell in love with Japanese wrestling, and when I came to WWE and did that camp, it was one of those things where, yeah, it was surreal to be there, but it was at the point where I don't really need them anymore because Japan is a place that I really, really fell in love with as well, performing there. But WWE was the cream of the crop at the time, and still is today. But it was a surreal experience for sure.
How was Dory Funk as a trainer?
He was a good trainer. He really concentrated on the basics. A lot of psychology he'd be teaching as well, which is something I think misses from a lot of the lower card matches today. I think Dory Funk could definitely offer a lot of advice in telling in-ring stories, working a body part, for example, working a knee, doing those type of things. And he was a good guy, especially when it came to psychology. He really knew how to lay out a match and tell us a logical story in that ring, which goes back to let's take reality and work reality. And instead, today you have let's take something that's completely unreal and just make it look cool. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, people aren't stupid. You know what I mean? People are indoctrinated, but they're not stupid.
And you were CMLL champion before you went to WWE. How big a deal was that to you? Is that's the big company? I think it's one of the oldest companies in the world, if not the oldest.
Yeah, becoming a Universal Champion in Mexico was a huge deal for me. And I got to work with Raul de Jalisco Jr. as well the entire time. And I mean, we beat each other up all over Mexico, Monterrey, going up into northern Mexico, back down to Mexico City, out into Acapulco. We went all over Mexico and just beat the crap out of each other. And then eventually, when it came down to the big blow-off match at Arena Mexico in Mexico City, it was the championship match that also had the masks on the line. And it was amazing. It was truly amazing to be in a storyline at the top of the card and really knock the ball out of the park down there. It was an honor to work with Raul de Jalisco, and it's something I'll never forget.
Is it true that the wrestlers in Mexico are a little bit more into drugs overall than other companies? Because I've had a few Mexican wrestlers tell me that.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a crew of guys that are always going to be heavy into drugs, but there are guys that are down in Mexico wrestling as well that don't do anything. They might drink some alcohol or something like that. But yeah, you do have your crew of guys though. But I mean, I think that's the same everywhere. In Mexico, it may be a little bit more than here in America, for example, or over in Japan, of course. But is it out of what I would consider a normal range that's expected in professional wrestling? Probably not. I'd say it's probably a little bit more than what I would consider to be average drug use in
And
professional
I
wrestling.
heard Bruce Pritchard also say when he came down to Mexico to kind of recruit you, you guys went out and you ate ant eggs and lion and ostrich. Is that like a common meal for you up there?
No, no, ostrich. I'm a big fan of ostrich meat, but what was it that I think it was lion, or was it? I think it was lion that he ate, and I ate a little piece of that. And at first, I was a little bit disgusted, not because the way the flavor was, that came after, but because it was lion. I'm eating lion meat here. And so I was eating ostrich meat. If you haven't had ostrich meat, I highly recommend it. It's tremendous meat. They have an ostrich farm south of here in Tucson, and you can get ostrich meat down there if you ever come out here to Arizona again. And it's
If they
phenomenal.
ever open up the border,
What's that?
if they ever open up the border,
Oh, it's terrible. It's just terrible. But I'll tell you what, when I ate that little piece of lion that he fed me, it was a little bit disgusting just because I was eating lion. But then when I sat back and started to examine the flavor, I was like, yep, this is absolutely disgusting. It tasted, now just imagine this, a dirty, wet cat. What does that smell like? That's what it tasted like. It's more than just gamey. I can handle gamey meat. I kind of enjoy it. This was just dirty, wet cat gamey. It wasn't a good flavor. That was my personal opinion of it. I ate some of the crispy ants. I didn't eat the worms. Bruce, if I remember correctly, I think he tried everything. If I remember,
he said he
maybe I'm
liked the
missing.
worms.
I think he tried everything.
Yeah.
I was a little
Yeah.
shocked.
Now, I heard Mrs. Yamaguchi in that angle you did, the famous thing where they tried to cut off your package, I guess. She wasn't an actual wrestler, she was just an actress.
Yeah.
What was it like working with an actress in a wrestling angle?
She was young, so she was cool. She was just uh, enjoying the moment, I guess. And it was one of those things where I never really sat down with her and got to know her much. We basically just worked together, and then once we're out of the arena, we're gone. But she was cool to work with. She was very professional. You wouldn't be able to tell it when you see her on TV, but backstage, yeah, she was in front of me anyways. She was always very professional.
And somebody wanted me to ask you what the difference is of Tessa Blanchard winning the Impact title compared to China winning the Intercontinental title? I know you wrestled China
Yep.
quite a bit.
Well, I think these are great things. When you look at Tessa Blanchard, I saw that match, and well, I'd like to reserve my opinion on that, but I think they could have done that match to be a lot more believable than it was. It's one thing to be able to do the moves, take the bumps, and sell. But if you're doing it in a way that's completely unbelievable, man, you're that. I mean, if I, as a fan, if I'm buying a ticket to come watch wrestling, I want to be able to sit there and not think. I want things to be spelled out in a way that are completely like that, logical, and I can understand it. If you're going to have me ignore that that's a woman wrestling a man, and you're going to have me ignore that the man has just beat the living hell out of this woman, and now the woman's going to blow a comeback on the man and win the title, I mean, that's not the way to lay out a match. I mean, at least in my view, my opinion would be, the woman is slipping everything the guy's trying to do. The guy scoops her up for a slam, slips in behind her, and the girl shoves the man into the turnbuckle. And until the point where maybe it's a quick shutdown from the guy to the woman, a quick shutdown, but nothing too devastating. Because that's the thing; these guys like to do devastating moves, even to women. And then when the woman gets back up and is running off the ropes like nothing's wrong with her 30 seconds later, now I got to start thinking and trying to make myself believe that this is real. I think it's a lost art in wrestling, the lost art of making it believable. I don't know, man. I think it's one of those things where, like we had Trish lose to China in order for me to lose my title to China. And other than that, we had Triple H interfere in my match where, I got the ball shot. She rolled me up 1, 2, 3. It's believable. But when you have a woman going eye to eye and toe to toe with a man that's clearly far larger, far stronger, and they're working it like it's a man versus man match, I can't buy it. I think I just wasted my money on a wrestling ticket. That's just my personal opinion.
I've tried to look up their ratings, but they don't release their ratings anymore, and they don't release their attendance anymore. So I highly doubt that means that they're blowing people away with the ratings with her as champion. So
Yeah, that's another thing. If you're there's a way to do it. You can get creative and do it, definitely. But there's got to be, you got to take reality and work that reality into the outcome you're looking for that will leave fans sitting there believing what they're watching. I want to go back to the day when I could come out of a wrestling show and I go, okay, I know that's all predetermined, man, but I got questions. That shit look real. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
fans do not, this is a fact. Fans do not leave the arena questioning whether was that a real shoot that I saw in there? Or was that a work? They don't leave the arenas doing that anymore. They leave the arenas going, yeah, I'm going to go buy this, they just go get a slushie somewhere. They leave wrestling knowing it's a work. And it's one thing to know it's a work, but it's another thing when you can have the fans leaving the arena questioning whether everything they saw was a work. And that doesn't happen today, at least in my opinion. It just doesn't happen.
now, for your Big Valvoski nickname, is that something you came up with or creative came up with?
That's a good question. I don't even remember. I'd have to think. I don't even think I can remember where exactly it came from. I think it may have just been off the cuff. Just me talking backstage and going, hey, you don't talk to the Big Valvoski like that. Because I remember saying that a lot at the very beginning. Just joking around with some of the guys, you know what I mean? But I don't know if someone had told that to me or if I thought it up or someone else thought it up. I just remember using it, and when I got a reaction from the fans by using it, I just kept saying it.
So it didn't have anything to do with you being a fan of the Big Lebowski movie or anything like that. It was just
No, but now that you mention it, that may have been part of it. And it kind of, now that you bring that up, I remember Test and A Train and I driving in a car from one city to the next. And I remember them talking about that movie. And we were all thinking about, the Lebowski thing. And then maybe it was somebody in the car, maybe Test or A Train, that just said Val Venis. I can't remember specifically, but that does sound kind of familiar. Whether that is where it originated, it may have been. It may have been, but I can't guarantee that. I can't remember that far back.
and for the money shot finisher that you did in WWE, was that your finish prior to WWE or something that they gave you?
Yeah, my finish was the splash off the top rope. I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe it was Vince Russo that called it the money shot. Now, there's a funny story about the money shot name. Was actually, yeah, I'm almost positive it was him that came up with it. At least he's the one that told me uh, about that name for the finish. So that's why I'm assuming he came up with it. But when he said that to me, in my mind, I'm thinking money shot. I splash off the top rope, 1, 2, 3, extra money, money shot. Makes sense, right? And so I probably wrestled with that finish for about, I don't know, 6, 7, maybe even 8 months in WWE. Before I found out what the money shot really meant, I had no idea what it meant beforehand. And I remember when people would ask me, what's your finish called? I go, it's called the money shot. And I remember they'd laugh. And sometimes I would sit back and I go, what is so funny about it? It's a cool name. I don't understand what's so funny about it. And it was probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 months later that I was with Tess and A Train, and we're all just joking around, and they brought it up. You got the coolest name for a finish at the money shot, man. It's whatever it was. And I said, I don't understand what's so cool about it. Making more money from winning a match? Okay. Well, I don't understand what's funny about it. And Tess looked back up at me and he was sitting in the front seat. I was sitting in the back. He turned around and stared me right in the eyes. He goes, brother, the money shot is the finish to a porn movie. And I kind of went back into the seat and I went, what do you mean it's the finish to a porn movie? He's like, yeah, it's when they finish in a porn movie. And I'm like, oh, and I started to say to myself in my head, that son of a bitch, Vince Russo. I had no idea. That's what they call the finish to a porn movie.
How was Vince Russo to work with? Because we always hear the negative stories, but obviously he was writing during WWE's ratings peak, so he couldn't have been that bad.
Vince Russo was an envelope pusher, man. I loved working with that guy. When that guy came up with storylines and came up with, even a few Val Venis jokes that he came up with, it was amazing to watch his mind work. And really, but here's where I saw, and I could be wrong about this as well. This is just my opinion. When Vince was writing in WWE, he was writing things that were pushing the envelope as far as he possibly could. And then it seemed like Vince would pull the chains back to where he wanted it. So Vince would go way out here, like Vince Russo would go way out here, and then Vince McMahon would pull him back to where he wanted him. I guess to make it TV suitable, I guess, without going too far. But he was a great mind in wrestling. He came up with phenomenal storylines. That was a time when every single card on the show was a storyline. There was a time, Crash Holly was better known than Goldberg. And it's one of those things where he had an amazing mind. When he went to WCW, I remember that day. We were coming back, I believe, from Europe at the time when we found out that he had left the company and went to WCW. It was a somber Raw backstage when we got back to stateside. People were really shocked because he was a writing machine in WWE. When he got to WCW, it seemed like, and again, this is just my opinion, it seemed like instead of focusing on writing for everyone on the card, he got in front of the camera, and all of his writing skills and talents got focused on just a few of the top guys. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I remember seeing when I was watching the WCW show. And I think Vince was far more effective behind the scenes writing for the talent instead of going in front of the camera and becoming the talent.
Was it his idea to come out with the shirt for you that would have like the jizz writing on it?
And I wore that to the ring too.
Yeah.
It was tremendous. Tremendous. Like I said, he was an envelope pushing dude. And a great mind for writing. Great mind for writing. But I think he's one of those guys that's so overly creative, he needs to have somebody there to pull him back in check and get that real good balance of pushing the envelope, but not to the point where it becomes a turnoff. You know, I think Vince would pull him back to the point where his content, his writing skills would create content that would go as far as human nature would allow before they go, okay, no more of this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, it's again, you want to push the envelope as far as you can to maximize the money on the table. But if you go just a little too far, money starts coming off the table, and that's a no-no. And obviously, people don't really understand that at AEW, leaving money on the table left, right, and center. It's craziness.
And I had a fan question that they wanted me to ask you if you had to provide your own towels, or would WWE give you a towel?
No, sometimes I would buy a stack of towels and wear one out every week. Once I'd run out of that stack of towels, I'd just take them from the hotel and use them. There was one time where there was an event going on. I can't remember which town it was. I know we were in St. Louis the night before, and then we drove to another town to do a house show. And when I got to that town, they had some big golf tournament on. All the hotels were sold out. And so there was only one room left in the entire town. It was at a Motel 6. And I didn't have any towels with me. And you know those Motel 6 towels, they're not the biggest towels in the world, nor are they the softest. Kind of scratchy, actually. And I had nothing else to wear to the ring the next day. So I took the Motel 6 towel, and I wore that to the ring. And Coach, remember Jonathan Coachman?
Yeah.
He called it out as soon as I walked out because it looked like I was wearing a white miniskirt. And he called it out on the air, and he said, "Oh, Val seems to have stayed at that Motel 6 last night."
That's
It was just terrible. It was just terrible.
because of your wrestling gimmick. Once you were out of WWE, did any porn companies ever make you an offer?
No, not directly. I had some messages that came through that, hey, we're an adult film company. Reach out to us. I think we can do business. But yeah, I have no interest in doing porn, man. No interest in doing porn.
But you would think that just because of the gimmick, people would have watched that. So you'd think someone would have possibly made you an offer. But yeah, I understand why you would not do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Not my
did you have,
forte. I'll play a porn character all day long. Playing a porn character I can do all day long. But would I really do porn? Absolutely not.
what was Jenna Jameson like to work with? Because you worked pretty closely with her for a little bit.
Yeah, she was, at least with me, she was very, very professional. She's super cool. We went in there. We did some of the filming at Bruce Pritchard's home. I believe we used his hot tub in his backyard as well, these hedges in the backyard. That's where I pop up with that purple helmet on. That's at Bruce Pritchard's backyard. And so we used the backyard, used his hot tub. But it was, the entire time she was there, it was all business and completely professional and very cool, actually. Very, very cool to work with her.
Did you watch a lot of Ravishing Rick Rude stuff before you started doing the Val Venis character?
I didn't watch a lot of Ravishing Rick Rude stuff before I started doing the Val Venis character, I've always watched Ravishing Rick Rude stuff. I thought, from day one that Ravishing Rick Rude was a phenomenal performer. He looked like $1 billion. He talked like any top-notch great wrestler and performer ever has. He was a guy that when he spoke, you knew that's a top guy right there. There was no questioning that. So I've always been a huge fan of Ravishing Rick Rude. Two guys in WWF days that I used to watch and really admire were Kurt Hennig and Ravishing Rick Rude, two guys that I thought were always phenomenal. So it wasn't that I didn't study him when they said, okay, you're going to play this character. I've just always been a huge fan of his. And so you could say it's been a lifelong study of Rick Rude's, at least as long as his career was in motion anyway.
And you wrestled The Rock on the Owen Hart tribute Raw the night after Owen's fall. Was that a tough match to do so soon after losing a coworker like that?
It wasn't a tough match to do because Rock and I were doing that in Owen's honor. And I was honored to be a part of that. And that's a tough memory right there. Every time I think of it, I literally just spoke to him for a good 3-4 minutes before he went upstairs to the rafters. And I was the very next match after he fell. And so it's something that's burned into my memory that anytime I think about it, man, it brings back, I'm not an emotional guy, but it does bring back a heavy feeling right in my sternum area. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but anytime I think of that, it's just like, man, that sucks so bad, And it's one of those things where I'll never forget it. It was, you have memories in life. As you go through life, there are things that happen that are so shocking or so outside the norm. There's no way you can ever forget the specifics of what you were doing when that happened. I can remember it like it was yesterday, doing push-ups and doing Hindu squats right in front of Bruce Pritchard's table in the gorilla position, getting ready for my match, warming up for it. And Bruce Pritchard standing up, throwing his headset down. He's going, EMTs, EMTs, somebody just fell from the rafters. And I remember it so vividly. And I'm sure you have memories that, are so shocking that you'll never forget the specifics of what happened when those memories were being created. And Owen Hart falling from the rafters was something, I'll never forget the specifics. It was,
do you remember your conversation with him, what it was about?
Funny, I don't really. I know we were talking about, like I was asking him about a rib that both him and Jeff Jarrett were getting ready to play on one of the other talent in the locker room, because they're always coming up with these, jokes and ribs to play. So I remember asking him what he had in mind. I don't remember what he told me. I don't remember. I know it was some kind of rib that he was thinking of, but I don't remember who it was for or what the rib was going to be. I do remember kind of chuckling at it, and then he walked away, and that was the last time I ever saw him.
You told me last time I interviewed you about the Al Snow rib that had to do with his phone number being put on Raw. Is there any other ribs that either you've seen or been involved with that you could share with us?
Oh, let me see. Well, did I ever tell you the rib with Christian and Edge?
No.
With the itching powder?
No.
So this was after Al Snow had put my cell phone number live on Raw, and my phone blew up. It was a big rib, really good rib, by the way, really good rib. Al's one of the most phenomenal human beings that I know in professional wrestling. He's genuine. He's hardworking. He's a go-getter. I love Al Snow. That guy's just an incredible dude. And loved working with him. We had so much fun working with Al Snow. But after he had put my number on Raw live, I'm trying to think of something I'm going to do to get back at Al Snow. So I thought of all kinds of things. One of the things I was trying to do was, does he buy insurance on his rental car? And is he fully covered? was, if he was, I had a couple of ideas of what I was going to do. I was going to follow him to a restaurant afterwards. This was one, and I think he told me about this rib before, so I was actually going to do the rib to him and put his car up on blocks, take the tires off, and throw him in the car. And now he's got to come out of the restaurant and put tires back on his car and somehow get the car off of brick blocks, right? Well, that didn't pan out. So I was trying to find out if he had insurance on his car. And I never found this out because something else happened. But what my plan was is if he had insurance on the car, I was going to get the expanding foam that you can buy in cans from like Home Depot or Lowe's. And when he parked his rental car at the arena, I was going to slip the hose through the crack in the window and fill the whole car up with expanding foam. The car will be ruined, be completely destroyed. And so that's why I spent a couple of weeks trying to get it out of him, talk to him a little bit and say, hey, by the way, do you pay for the insurance on the rental car when you get it, or do you already have it on your policy that you have personally? Or I'm trying to, and I just couldn't get it out of him. Well, while I spent a couple of weeks all the time trying to whittle it out of him, I found out that it was Christian that had told Al Snow to put my number live on Raw. So while Al was the performer putting my number on Raw, Christian was the mastermind. So my target went from locked on to Al Snow to locked on to Christian. So now I've had to restructure everything in my head and figure out a good rib to play on Christian. So A-Train and Test and I, one day, we were in a mall. We walked into a magic shop and Test pulled out some itching powder. And I'm like, does that stuff really make you itch? He goes, oh, yeah. And so I thought of a perfect rib. And I believe it was Hershey, Pennsylvania that we were at. And when I got to the arena, I went into the locker room. We were there around noon. I walked into the locker room, and Edge and Christian aren't there. A lot of the other guys are there, but Edge and Christian aren't there yet. They haven't arrived. So, I'm putting my bags on my spot, getting all set up. And then Edge and Christian come in, and I say, hey, guys, what's up? And they go and they drop their bags in their spot. I should have been paying attention to how they were putting their bags and stuff, but whatever, I wasn't. And finally, as the boys start heading out of the locker room and heading down to catering to grab a bite to eat, I was saying to Test and Edge, I said, hey, guys, when everybody's gone, watch the locker room door. I'm going to go into Christian's bag, pull his tights out, and in the crotch area, I'm going to fill it up with itching powder and then kind of take a pencil and really rub it in there. And Edge was sitting right across from me reading a book. And everyone else had left. And I'm sitting there scratching my head. I'm going, come on, this son of a bitch has got to leave this locker room. And finally, after a few minutes, I figured he's going to read that whole book here. So screw it, I'll do it another time. So I get up, and as I walk out, Tess and A-Train are at the front door like they're supposed to be, watching, making sure nobody comes in. And I go, guys, we're going to have to do it another time because Edge is in there. He's going to read that whole damn book before he leaves. And as soon as I said that, Edge walked out. And he says to us, he goes, hey, you guys going to catering? And I'm like, yeah, you going there now? He goes, yeah, we'll see you there in a minute. As soon as Edge took off to catering, I turned to Tess and A-Train and said, guys, watch this door. And I dove back in there, and I walked up to where I know Edge and Christian set their bags down. And I'm looking at the bags. I'm going, which one's Christian? Which one's Edge's? Fuck it. I'll do them both. So I pulled out Edge's trunks or whoever it was, rubbed a little bit in the crotch, and with a pencil, I just pushed it all into the material, pulled out the other trunks out of the other bag, put it all in the material. And of course, as the night goes on, we're getting closer to showtime. Edge and Christian eventually come in and get dressed. And they're putting their long tights on and their boots, and they're walking around the locker room and nothing's happened. And I know for a fact that stuff was itchy because my hand got really, really itchy when I was working with it, trying to put it in there. And I figured, well, maybe once it's out of the bag, if it's out any length of time, it stops itching maybe. I didn't know. I just figured this is a dud. They're walking around and nothing's happening. And I'm like, well, that was a waste of money. Well, when they went out to gorilla position because they were getting ready to wrestle, Tess comes right in. Val, you got to come see this. And I followed Test all the way out to the base of where gorilla position is. And I'm looking up into gorilla position and I see Edge and Christian pulling the material off their crotch area. I died, completely died. And then I watched them go out to the ring and they got to do a tag match. And every time the guy's standing on the corner while the partner's wrestling, they're sitting there moving, their legs are totally uncomfortable and it's clearly obvious. Then they started tagging in and out faster and faster because they both wanted to be the guy that's sitting there holding the turnbuckle, just so they can try to fiddle around with trying to get comfortable. But when they came back to the locker room after their match, I was dying laughing. When they came into the locker room, I kind of had to settle down, right? Like, and the only people that knew were me, Test, and A-Train. No one else knew at that point. And Edge and Christian came running to the locker room, going, oh my God. And they're ripping their clothes off. And I'm like, dude, what's up? And Edge looked right at me in the eye and he goes, I think Christian bought laundry detergent that we're both allergic to. I busted out laughing. Going, Christian, why would you buy laundry? I didn't do that. That's ridiculous. And of course, once they got all their clothes off, they ran into the shower. And apparently, running water makes itching powder even worse. And so they were screaming in the showers. It was hilarious. It was funny. And then that night, a couple hours later, we were all at the Outback Steakhouse, and Test and A-Train and I walked into Outback, and of course, there's Edge and Christian. I'm going, hey guys, what's up? They're like, man, this stuff's still itchy. And Edge is like telling Christian, man, I don't know what laundry detergent you bought, but you need to stop using that stuff. It was hysterical, absolutely hysterical.
Did you ever tell them the truth?
I think several years later they found out it was me that did it. Yeah, it was that was a rib and a half, but I finally got him back. So I still never got Al Snow back though.
Well, maybe there'll be an opportunity down the road still.
Oh, I'm sure there will be.
What do you think about Edge's comeback? He's having a WrestleMania match against Randy Orton this week, I guess.
Yeah, it's I just recently found out that he had come back, and hey, man, all the more power to him. He's a hell of a wrestler, hell of a talent, one of the best in the business. And I hope he does really, really well. I really do. He's always going to be a top guy there. Always going to be a top guy.
Do you think that them running shows without a crowd is a good thing for the overall product?
I've only seen little bits and pieces of it without a crowd, and there's a reason I've only seen bits and pieces of it. Without a crowd, I don't know, man. It's just not the same. And I know they're doing their best, but it makes me even more mad at government and this propaganda machine that mainstream media is. They've literally destroyed a WrestleMania. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me that we've destroyed a WrestleMania for a political agenda. It's ultimately a political agenda. And that's the evilness of governments and why we keep voting for these people. I mean, you've literally destroyed the dream of a lot of talent that have spent their entire lives working to get to that one moment, the WrestleMania moment. And it's taken away from them. It's completely taken away from them. And I know WWE, they're going to do the best they can, but it's not the same. My opinion, it's just not the same. It really isn't. And I hope that government, I'd love to see every politician that's involved in shutting everything down and advocating for the shutdown of this global economy. I'd like to see them all rounded up and put into Gitmo for life. It's treason to the human race. And, WrestleMania is just one example of the devastation. You're devastating humans' dreams. And it's craziness. It's just not the same, man. It's just not the same. You need the crowd there. The crowd's got to be a part of wrestling. That's what wrestling is. And it's not the same, brother.
What was the atmosphere like backstage when the WCW guys came over to WWE?
Well, I can tell you what I observed and what my personal feelings were. What I observed were some of the guys that were afraid of maybe being replaced, by some of these guys, or have their spots, taken away from them, or there were a few guys that were worried. Um, there were other guys, and I was one of the guys that was like, man, this is just more talent to work with. You know what I mean? Um, and I think that's the difference between some people that look at the glass half full and the other humans that will look at the glass half empty. When Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero came over, man, I was excited, man. Those are two guys I wanted to work so bad. So I was excited. I also know there was some guys that are actually really good friends, that I'm really good friends with, that they weren't so happy about it. And we'd sit down and talk about it like, dude, why wouldn't you be happy about this? This is a good thing. This is talent, incredible talent that you can work with, and entertain fans with these guys. But for some reason, there were some guys, they just didn't see it like that. And I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it's the way they were brought up. Maybe it's the way they've always thought. I don't know. I looked at it as opportunity, and they looked at it as a threat to their spot.
It seemed like in the generation after yours, the ruthless aggression era generation, a lot of them complained about behind the scenes bullying. Did you ever notice any of that type of stuff going on?
Yeah, but you got to remember, I mean, wrestling was always full of bullying, but it wasn't considered bullying. It was called, just ribbing, or, taking pot shots at each other. I mean, if any of these social justice warriors were in the car with A-Train Test and I, literally bullying each other for 3-4 hours on a road trip, well, we did it because it was fun. It was funny. It's funny to take. I mean, everybody's got faults. And when you can make fun of those faults and still be really good friends, man, that's a solid relationship right there. And I think, being able to joke around with each other, and really call out weaknesses and put over, great qualities, and call out weaknesses, I think you can really develop some very solid and honest and truthful relationships. It's not like that today. At least that's what I'm observing anyway. It seems like a lot of wrestlers these days are easily offended by anything, and it's just not the same, man. Like, I don't know what's happened to wrestling, but there are some guys in wrestling that you can't even. Well, let's take Cody Rhodes for example. I mean, he automatically jumped to the conclusion, completely irrationally, without fact or logic, that I said terrible and horrible things about Nyla Rose. It's not true at all. I never said anything terrible or horrible about Nyla Rose. I just stated facts and wrapped my facts up in my opinion and shared it. That would have been open for discussion back when I was wrestling. It's not open for discussion anymore. You discuss it, you get banned. Hashtag banned by AEW.
Now, Jesse Ventura is another controversial guy. He's got a lot of his own opinions that not those type of people don't agree with. What are your thoughts on Jesse Ventura?
I met Jesse Ventura a couple of times. He was always really cool. I like Jesse because he thinks critically. He's not easily offended. I don't agree with him on some issues. There are a few issues I'd really like to debate with him on. But there's a lot of issues where, he's seen the light. He can see what's going on. He can rationalize fact and logic and come out with a very logical conclusion. He's one of those guys, I think, that is old school and is not easily offended by anything, and will not back down from sharing his opinions that are based on facts and logic.
Now, when you were in TNA, I think that was around the time they were trying to compete with WWE head-to-head Monday Night Wars. Did you think that was a wise idea?
Sorry, bro.
Oh, no problem.
Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, and I'll edit that out. When you worked for TNA, they were trying to go head-to-head with WWE on Monday nights, I believe. Did you think that was a wise decision on their part?
No. I don't think they were ready to compete against WWE, uh, one on one in the same time slot. I don't think they were ready for it. Again, I looked at TNA and I saw, when you look over at WWE, you saw one man, and that was Vince McMahon, who had a vision for the company, and everyone else fell in behind to help Vince McMahon reach that vision. When you have that kind of game plan for your company, it's hard to compete against a company that has that game plan with a company that has 4 and 5 heads pulling it in all different directions. And you don't know which way is up. And for them to be in that state of doing business and all of a sudden decide they're going to compete against a company that has that one vision clearly defined, you don't have a chance. I think they really should have stayed in their own time slot and really worked on bringing these 4 or 5 different heads pulling the company in different directions and bring them together into one vision. And during that time, they should have been acquiring their own fan base. Once they built their fan base up and they had one vision for the company that was going to cater to wrestling fans, then maybe try and step up and compete with WWE. But I don't see a company that's being pulled in 5 and 6 and 7 different directions competing with a company that has one solid vision. And you just can't compete against that. I mean, at least not successfully. You could definitely compete against it until your finances run out of money, but then you're done. And I mean, that's what happened with WCW. Too many chefs in the kitchen.
And when you worked for All Japan Pro Wrestling, I believe Johnny Ace was behind the scenes there. How was your experience with him in All Japan and also in WWE?
Johnny was the guy that brought me over to All Japan. I was tag teaming with another former WWF talent named Rex King. He was Timothy Wells in WWF back then in the tag team Well Done. I think he was only there for a heartbeat. But I had been working with him in Puerto Rico. We went over to Japan as a tag team. He had known Johnny Ace. So through Rex King, I met Johnny Ace and was brought over to All Japan Pro Wrestling, which I'm forever grateful for. Johnny's a go-getter. He's a businessman. He's a great finish guy. If for Japanese style finishes, which I am personally a massive fan for, he knew how to create Japanese style finishes, and I fell in love with those style of finishes. And I took what I learned from Johnny Ace and of course the Japanese crew over there as well. And when I went back down to Puerto Rico and did a loser leaves town match with my old tag team partner down there, Shane Sewell, we did an entire match Japanese style, and it was a classic down there. It was a classic. It blew the roof off the building. It was phenomenal. And so Johnny Ace introduced me into the Japanese way of putting matches together, I guess is the best way you can say it, the easiest way to say it. Putting matches together and really designing finishes that literally leave fans on the edge of their seat every single false finish. And so for that, I'm super grateful to Johnny Ace for that experience and that knowledge. It really added to the psychology part of wrestling that I was constantly working on. I had a couple of old timers throughout my career that would always look me in the eye and they'd say, it's not about getting your shit in. It's about emotionally connecting with the fans. And you do that by being very believable and telling stories where we go back to the fan doesn't have to think. You're putting something on in front of the fans that makes sense. They don't have to think in order to make it make sense for them. And if you can do that, the fans are going to leave that arena saying that was money well worth being spent on that wrestling ticket. And I don't see that with wrestling fans today. They don't leave the arenas fully satisfied, I think.
And for your New Japan matches, for any of the fans on here that want to go and check out one of your better matches, which ones would you suggest people look up from New Japan?
Oh, for New Japan. Let's see. Man, I'm trying to remember which ones were actually available on video now. Trying to think. Probably my match against what was his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. He was the champion over in New Japan Pro Wrestling. What the heck was his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. I want to say it was no, not Hiroshi. I can't remember what his name is. I can't
All
believe
right.
it.
Well, someone will write it in the comments.
Yeah, it's right on the tip of my tongue. For some reason, I just can't remember it. Pothead problems.
But you were known as Val Venis there, right? In New Japan after WWE?
Yeah, I believe they introduced me as Val Venis. Yes.
If you had had the choice to do another direction with your character after the whole Val Venus was over and the right to censor and everything, what direction would you have taken it?
That's a good question. I probably would have liked to have taken it into a direction that would be even more believable. Maybe I let Vince know I would love to have worked Ric Flair for a long, long time. Finally, I got to work Ric Flair, but it was after a long time being there. But it didn't really go far. I mean, we had a couple of matches, and that was it. I really would have liked to have done something with Ric Flair and maybe his daughter. I thought that would have been a great angle. Of course, his daughter at the time, I don't think was really ready to step into the limelight. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely things I probably would have liked to have gone after. Definitely would have liked to have been in the IC title hunt a few more times. World title at that time. I mean, to me, it was, I don't know. It would have been good for paychecks, but it's not something that I really aspired to. I got to go for the world title. When I look at the Intercontinental title, I look at the technical guys. You look at Ricky Steamboat, Kurt Hennig, Macho Man Randy Savage. I mean, you look at these guys that were winning the Intercontinental title, and that's what I wanted to win because that's where the really good wrestlers were. I thought the World Championship was always guys that were okay at wrestling, but they were more characters and mouthpieces that could really emotionally connect with the fans. Whereas it seemed like, at least back when I was watching and really coming up through the wrestling ranks, that the IC title is always where the workhorses were. And I always wanted to be considered one of those workhorses. The guy like Kurt Hennig that could just go. There was no question about it. He could wrestle a broomstick and make it look like a champion. And we're technical, very, very technical. And I love that style of wrestling. I love that old school, real technical wrestling. I really enjoy that a lot. Yeah, the IC title is definitely something I would have liked to have been more involved with, especially near the end of my career at that point.
And I'm guessing, as Bruce Pritchard has spoken so highly of you in the clips I've heard of him talking about you, I guess you probably had a good relationship with him as a producer.
Yeah, I think Bruce and we got along. I like Bruce. He's a good dude. He's very business orientated. Bruce, while he does have his wild side, when it comes to buckling down, I think Bruce understands what fans want. And again, it goes back. It's not hard. It's not difficult to understand. You just gotta keep it simple. And I think Bruce is really good at keeping things simple. And he understands when you present something to him, the first thing I think Bruce Pritchard looks at, is that going to leave money on the table or are we going to get it all? And if there's money left on the table with your idea and he can't manipulate it into something that's going to not leave money on the table, he throws it out, and he should. And, I like guys like that, man. Never leave money on the table. You leave money on the table, you're not just hurting yourself, you're hurting now all the other talent around you as well.
Now, I have some political related questions. These are all from fans, so I might not actually know what I'm talking about with some of these questions. Um, One of the fans, Patrick, had a question for you that you feel that the police are mafia, and he was wondering how you expect society to function without police around.
Well, I mean, and this is where we go to indoctrination. 13 years of government teaching children in the most impressionable years of their lives that you need government to supply security for society. And after 13 years of being indoctrinated or educated in a government school, that they're not going to teach you that there are other ways to provide security for society that doesn't involve an extortion racket called taxation. So it's understandable that when you come out of 13 years of so-called free government education, the majority of the people are going to think we need police. They don't think outside that box. You know, though that I call public education indoctrination camps. And inside these indoctrination camps, after 13 years of having children in those halls and walls for 8 hours a day, it shouldn't surprise anyone that their brains have been confined to these boxes and they can't think outside the box. So when I hear a human being say, well, if you don't have taxes, who's going to police? You're going to have chaos. Who's going to be the police? It's like, have you ever actually stopped and started to think about possible ways that the human population can provide security for themselves within communities and whatnot without an extortion racket called taxation? And the majority of people don't have a clue what I'm talking about. You can privatize police forces. I'm not against police. I'm not against peacekeepers or a security force or a peacekeeping force of some kind. What I'm against is the funding of what we call police today. There's a couple of things with that. Extortion is extortion because you are victimizing someone that earned wealth, and you're using intimidation, coercion, and force to extract that wealth from that human being. It doesn't matter whether you call yourself a private citizen that's using intimidation, coercion, and force, or you have that private citizen that now is now labeled a government, a politician. It's extortion is a crime not because a politician writes it on paper. It's a crime because it victimizes someone. The fact that government runs under this label called government, or humans run under this label called government, doesn't change the fact that you're victimizing human beings that labored for the wealth they have. You're still using intimidation, coercion, and force. And cops today are the beneficiaries of that intimidation, coercion, and force. They willfully pursue a career where they know their entire paychecks, every single penny that funds their standard of living and that will fund their pension, is stolen loot. So excuse me for questioning the morality and the ethics of every police officer in America and Canada. It's one of those things where I'm not against policing. I'm against the extortion racket that funds policing. We can do better. We're human beings. We have brains in our head for a reason. We can devise ways of funding the security that we all want, need, and desire without resorting to the criminal activity of extortion. And I think these IRS agents all need to be fired. They should be given an opportunity. You can walk off the job now and nothing will happen to you. Go get a job in the private sector and serve your community. Flip burgers for people that want to eat burgers. Fix cars for people that need to have their cars fixed. Create TVs for people that want to buy your TV. But to call people up on the phone and say, you owe us so much money because I'm an IRS agent, you're just a professionally bought and paid for extortionist, and you should be in jail, period. Just because you call yourself an IRS agent doesn't mean what you're doing is not a crime. It's victimization of private sector humans. So these people that say, we need police. Okay, I'm all for peacekeepers. Let's find a different way to fund them. And when you have police that are being paid for with stolen loot by the professional extortionists, what do? They start writing. They don't just fix your potholes and keep you safe. Now they're going to use the people that are paid for with money that's been stolen from all of us. They're not just there to keep us safe. They're there to enforce the diktats of mafia bosses called politicians. Grow the wrong plant, and we'll send over the guy that's supposed to keep you safe to put handcuffs on you. And if you resist, he'll shoot you dead. And to me, that's insanity. That is absolute insanity, but it's normalized because people come out of 13 years of government education fully indoctrinated to believe that that's the normal thing to do. It's not normal at all. You're literally legitimizing criminals, and they're looked at as heroes now. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. If I forced another human being to pay me money, I'd be considered a criminal. And an IRS agent isn't considered a criminal. They're doing the exact same thing I would do. But, government is criminal from top to bottom. I'm for maybe a body of representatives, but instead of having IRS agents, let's have professional fundraisers. People go to university for 2 to 4 years to learn how to run charities and run fundraisers. Let's replace all the politicians with fundraisers and have them raise the funds to fix our roads and to pay our peacekeeping forces. I'm all for peacekeeping forces, whether it be police, whether it be private security companies, whatever the case may be. What I'm against is the criminal enterprise of the IRS stealing money from people in order to fund politicians' heavies, the mafia bosses, politicians' heavies. That's who we're funding.
And what are your thoughts on voter by mail and voter ID?
Well, it's that I haven't really given a whole lot of thought to. I'm against anybody being required to have ID of any kind. I think you should be as anonymous as you want to be or be as well known as you want to be. It's supposed to be, a free country. This idea of it goes back to the idea of force. If they want to do it, I'm okay with it, but don't make it mandatory. Make it voluntary. And then open up the free market or take the government rules and regulations off the free market so that private enterprise can devise innovative ways that people can identify themselves to people they want to work with. And I don't think we need government IDs. I think private sector can do far better than anything government can do.
Was Pizzagate real?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you're a rational thought and you can look at facts and not let social justice emotions get in the way where you just ignore facts. Just go read John Podesta's emails and tell me that son of a bitch is not a pedophile. The guy is clearly a pedophile. And you look at not just what the emails that were dropped from WikiLeaks, but you look at the people he hangs out with. I mean, the known pedophiles. Dennis Hassert was a Republican pedophile, convicted, by the way. And he was really good friends with John Podesta. You got Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, these guys are child pedophiles. They literally ran a child pedophile ring, and not just in America or Washington, D.C., but it was a global pedophilia ring. And I still believe it's operational today.
Do you think Jeffrey Epstein is dead, or do you think he killed himself?
That is something I don't think any of us will ever know for sure. I definitely believe he did not kill himself. I believe there's a good chance he's still alive, but I also think there's a good chance he could be dead. But he was dead. If he's dead, he was definitely murdered. But is he still alive? I think that's definitely a possibility. That guy had so many powerful connections, so many people that visited that island, and from what the evidence points to, it appears that Jeffrey Epstein was in intelligence with the Israeli Mossad. And obviously, we can't say for sure because we don't have 100% facts that prove this. But there are a lot of little facts that are definitely shedding light on the fact that, yeah, this could very well be a possibility. And it's definitely plausible that he was an agent for the Israeli Mossad, which is a mafia, The Israeli Mossad is they're just like the CIA. They are mafia. Mafia has their people in powerful positions in the Mossad and in CIA as well. And I think that the Israeli Mossad uh, funded his expose into mingling with wealthy and rich people and politicians that are looking to cozy up with those wealthy and rich people. He found the corruptible ones and blackmails them by having them videotaped or video recorded raping children. Why would he do that? In order for the Mossad to use blackmail. Hey, Bill Clinton, we'll help to use corporations that are connected with us to help fund your campaign to become president of the United States. And you keep the money coming from American taxpayers into Israel. And if you don't, here's a videotape that the world will see. And I think that happens. I think that's another reason you cannot have a platform called government that has the kind of power and control it does over private sector humans. Literally the power to steal wealth, and not have that platform called government be an absolute magnet for the criminal element in all of society. And so, mafia, of course, they want political power. And they've spent decades acquiring political power, getting their sons into political positions of power. And it's people don't believe that happens. It's happened all throughout history, and it's happening today. And I think pedophilia is just one of the tools that these vicious criminal mafia members use to make sure that the politicians, their hacks, keep the money flowing to Israel. And I think Jeffrey Epstein was definitely one of the guys that was uncovered and exposed for doing that. And I believe that's what's going on there. And so it may be that the Israeli Mossad, along with their mafia partners in the CIA, partnered up and got Jeffrey Epstein out of that jail and left a dead man that looked just like him in his place. And if you notice in any of the autopsy shots, they never show the face. They only show the neck and the chest. That's kind of suspicious, I would say. There are just a lot of little things that when you understand what government really is, and then you look at the small facts that people ignore in the story of what happened, it's hard to not believe that happened.
Who do you think's going to win the 2020 general election?
Man, the way it is right now, Trump is going to win it hands down. And I think the Democrats know it. I think the Democrats are extremely excited about having the economy shut down. Trump, even though he's got banker hands all over him, he did understand that lower taxation and less regulation does spur the economy. And the economy, let's face it, even though it was all based on the printing of money to keep stocks high, people were producing. Manufacturing was coming back to the United States. I mean, when you don't threaten companies, private sector humans that are running companies, when you don't threaten them with a massive extortion racket, they tend to want to do business where you're at. So businesses were coming back, people were getting back to work. And I think the Democrats are extremely happy that this BS called the coronavirus pandemic has shut the entire economy down. They're extremely happy at this point in time. And I don't see it ending. I see the Democrats constantly watering the fear-mongering campaign to keep it going all the way through to the election so that they can say that Trump caused the economy to implode, that Trump cost everybody their jobs, that people are losing their homes now because they can't pay their mortgage. And on top of that, they're trying to get people addicted to free money. It's insanity. And they don't even understand where this money is coming from. When government has the central banking cartel print money out of thin air, it's literally stealing the value of all of our work, our labor, our skills, and our talents right out of the dollar bills we've already worked for. They're literally stealing that value, placing that value that you labored for into brand new bills, and then giving it to the sheep. And the sheep are like, I can't wait to get my check. They just stole it from you, and now they're going to give you a little bit back. But again, it goes back to government controlling education and putting people's brains in that little box where they can't think outside that box, and they don't see what's happening. And it's sad. It's so sad to see an entire population so heavily indoctrinated.
Did you ever get the chance to meet Trump at a WWE event?
I did. I did. It was when he was working with WWE. Met him a couple times. And I remember the very first time I shook his hand, I walked up to him and I was a fan of him. I was a fan, he's a creative guy. And he's a go-getter. He's a workaholic, obviously. And just the buildings that he helped create are home to people that really love living in those buildings. And in the casinos, they were home to people that love to gamble. So he created things that private sector humans wanted, needed, and desired, and became a billionaire because of it. And to me, that's inspirational. There are some things that I do not like about Trump at all. From what I understand, he used eminent domain against an elderly lady that did not want to sell her property. And I think eminent domain is wrong on all different. It's criminal, and I think he should go to prison for that. But as far as his work ethic, it's inspirational for sure. I mean, that's a work ethic that's like a Vince McMahon work ethic. I don't even think Vince McMahon sleeps. I think he's constantly working.
And what do you think of Trump's relationship with Rand Paul?
So I don't know a whole lot about the Rand Paul Trump relationship. I know they've had a couple of times where they've gotten together on certain things, and then other times where they've gone completely in opposite directions. Rand Paul is one of the most libertarian folks in government today. So I tend to look at what he says with, I guess, with a little more believability than I would Trump. That said, Rand Paul is not his dad. He's not Ron Paul. Ron Paul is very, very moral, very, very ethical. It's one of those things where Rand Paul is still a statist. He's just he's like Kane almost. He's a minimal statist, is what I would say, and it's the statism that I'm against completely.
Now, I'm not sure I know how to pronounce this. This is a fan question, but your thoughts on the Canaan, also known as Q? Maybe I'm mispronouncing it wrong.
Yeah, I don't put a whole lot of faith into what this whole Q guy says. I tend to believe government's evil, man. And I think there are people out there that do try to examine facts and not pay attention to mainstream media and really come to their own conclusions based on the facts in front of them that they've acquired. And I think a lot of those people are putting faith in Q when, number one, they have no idea who that guy is. Number two, government is riddled. I mean, the history of government is riddled with criminals that manipulate people. And I think Q may be a controlled distraction from criminals in the private or in the banking cartel, the central banking cartel, maybe the military industrial complex. I think and I could be wrong. These are just my opinions based on the little bit of information that I have about Q, which isn't a whole lot. But I would say there's a good chance that he is controlled opposition, feeding the critical thinkers just enough to keep them hooked, but at the same time keep them distracted from real facts that are out there. For example, John Podesta's emails. The guy's a pedophile. It's one thing where I don't understand how when people say there's no facts proving John Podesta's a pedophile, and WikiLeaks dropped the emails. If you're a rational person and you can read through those emails and still come out saying that John Podesta is not a pedophile, I think you might need to go see a psychologist. I mean, his emails are there public for everybody to see. And yet these people that try to say, oh, yeah, you're just a tin foil hat wearing son of a bitch. There's no way he's a pedophile. I don't know what else to say. The emails are there. You can read them for yourself. You know what I mean? It's incredible that people, and I think that's something that Q may be distracting critical thinkers from. Critical thinkers are always looking for little bits and pieces of information that they can acquire. And I think when Q drops a little piece, it keeps the critical thinkers distracted as they examine the facts or the information that Q drops.
And Chris Korbelik wanted me to ask you why you do your audits at your local post office when their employees are low level and don't have anything to do with the operation of the government.
Well, it's one of those things where they work for government. They are government employees. And this is getting back to exercising our rights and showing you on the most basic level, showing humanity on the most basic level, where even the lowest level government employee will violate your rights, even when they took an oath to uphold the Constitution. And, we walk into a post office. Those are government employees. They're there to serve us. And every private sector human has a right to video record inside public places that we all pay for and not be interfered with by government employees that are supposed to deliver our mail. But what happened when I walked into that Awatuki post office? I literally had I think she was the postmaster, come out and assault me. She literally put her hands on me. No, you can't do that. Call the police. Call the police. It's like, where did she learn that behavior? She's a government employee. She's there to serve us. And if our cameras are something that she's completely against, she needs to lose her job and go back to studying what our Constitution has. It's not a Constitution that gives you your rights. The First Amendment, freedom of the press, freedom of the press. The Constitution doesn't give you that right. You are already born as a human being with that right. The Constitution was just the founding fathers' attempt to create a document that would recognize those natural rights that we're all born with, enshrine those rights, and in an attempt to stop government employees from violating these rights. Well, the post office is a prime example. The Constitution protects you from nothing, because that postmaster, that old lady, came and literally assaulted me for doing nothing but exercising my First Amendment right to freedom of the press and video recording in a public space inside a government building. And when you see government employees disrespecting your rights like that, how do they expect us to respect their job? We need to get back to, hey, you have these rights for a reason. There are men and women years and years and years ago that gave their lives for you to have those rights. The least you can do is exercise them at every turn. And people don't do that anymore. People do not exercise their rights. When that lady assaulted me, there was a younger guy that was inside the post office that came running out and got in my face to try and back up the postal employee. Why would he do that? 13 years of free government education put in his brain in a little tiny box. And he doesn't understand his own rights or other people's rights. And instead, if government says you do so, you do so. And I'm not down with that. And I don't think anybody else should be either.
Where can I watch that video? I never saw it.
Yeah, it's on my YouTube channel at topshelfanarchy.com. And you'll see a few post office ones on there.
Do you mind if, when you're talking about this part of the video, if I put like a clip of it over top of your talking so people could see what you're
Yeah,
talking
for sure, brother.
about? Okay. And the final political question I'll ask you is from Paul Rosenberg. He says, is it possible that this whole pandemic thing was an attempt to crash the Western economy by China? And so in turn, Trump is borrowing money from the Federal Reserve so we can merge it with the Treasury and then audit the Federal Reserve, eliminate the national debt, and eliminate income tax.
No, I don't believe that at all. I believe this was planned. Bill Gates had Event 201. If you're ever interested in reading about that, just Google Event 201. Bill Gates and his foundation are for population control, along with these global central bankers. They're using vaccines to accomplish that. They also, in Event 201, literally described, this is back last October, literally described what is factually happening right now. And so I think this was completely planned. The Federal Reserve, the central banking cartel of Europe, partnered up and found very corrupt local bankers here in America, one of them, J.P. Morgan. They funded his entire local bank here to become a big bank in America, which made him powerful, made him connected with politicians, And then they used J.P. Morgan to attract corruptible politicians, meet at Jekyll Island, and hammer out the details of how they were going to create the Federal Reserve and bring the European Central Bank and set up shop right here in America. And it opened up in 1913. Since 1913, they've been printing money out of thin air. Now, at first, the deal was, okay, we'll allow the European central bankers to print the money that we all work for, but it's going to be backed by gold. Okay, as long as they get set up shop, they can do with that deal for a while. Then in 1971, Nixon removed gold off the U.S. dollar. From 1971 until today, every year they printed more and more and more money, and now you're seeing that slow rise in money supply, and you're seeing that go parabolic. And we started to see that at the beginning of Trump's, or not Trump's term, at the beginning of Bush's term, after 9/11. You saw the takeover of the security at the airports. You saw Bush literally double the national debt by printing money out of thin air like it's nothing, just water pouring out of the faucet. Then came along Obama, and Obama doubled it again. Obama put America into more debt than all 43 presidents before him combined. The printing of money has gone parabolic. And now Trump is already on pace to surpass Obama. The dollar, I mean, it's literally the printing of money is just, it's gone parabolic to the point none of us have ever seen the printing of money like this. None of us, well, a lot of us still aren't seeing it. Why? Because everybody's paying attention to COVID-19. What will happen, however, is that $13 tub of butter that people buy today, $600 to $1,000 this time next year or the year after. Hyperinflation is no joke, and it literally destroys everybody's lives. And I think COVID-19 is definitely a pandemic that is distracting from the collapse of the U.S. dollar. And if you look all throughout history, during the collapses, what did the politicians do? They didn't stop the printing because that caused damage too. They've already got they're too deep into this mess. So what do? They try to print off more and more and more, faster and faster and faster, trying to print their way out of this mess. And it just gets worse and worse and worse until the dollar is worthless. And that's the track we're on right now. That is absolutely the track we're on right now. And COVID-19, the pandemic, it covers a few different bases for government. It allows them to eventually come out with this vaccine that their big pharmaceutical guys are going to make a few $1 billion off of just vaccinating everybody. And it also completely distracts from the printing of currency out of thin air, which is the theft of value we already work for. Literally stealing the value of the dollars we already worked for. It's theft. They should all be rounded up and arrested.
And if people want to know more about your political views, you mentioned your YouTube channel, but where are the social media that they can follow you at?
Yeah, so they can find me on Facebook and on Twitter, of course, at Val Venis ENT. But I'm starting to do a lot more things on blockchain-based platforms, decentralized blockchain-based platforms like Minds, Minds.com. I'm on that platform now as well. Gab, which is a decentralized Twitter alternative. So I'm on Gab now as well. Also, YouTube's going to have some big competition from a blockchain-based alternative called Library, called LBRY.TV. Absolutely phenomenal platform. I just signed up not too long ago, and I'm going to start really, creating content and putting it up on Library. Not a lot of people know about it yet, but they will. They will. It's a phenomenal platform, censorship free. You own your account. There's no human being on the planet that can ban you or suspend you or anything like that. They can downvote your content if they don't like your content and make it harder for other people to see, but they can never stop you from posting. There's not a human being that can stop you from exercising freedom of speech.
And a bunch of fans wanted me to ask you if you ever had the chance to share a joint with RVD.
I did on many occasions. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. RVD's, he's a great guy, man. I like RVD. I think RVD and I are somewhat on the same page in some aspects of politics, but I think RVD leans a little more to the left on some issues. But I love RVD, man. He's a great dude, great talent, and I love blazing with RVD. We start picking each other's brains, coming up with ideas, and he's a great dude, no question.
And I know the Godfather lights up every now and then. I think I had some with him before his shoot interview in Vegas. How was he in The Right to Censor to work with?
Godfather is one of my favorite people, man. He was always amazing to work with. I hung out with Godfather quite a bit when we were doing, road trips. Even when we did the Hulkamania tour in Australia, him and I hung out most of the time, just because we both have a thing for pot. So it was. I've always liked working with Godfather. Right to Censor was. It's not a. It's not a point. It's not a. I don't even know how to say that. We'll just keep it big. Right to Censor was not my favorite thing to do, but Godfather made it bearable. It was. He made it fun. It was. If it wasn't for him, I probably would have gone stir crazy in those long black pants and the dress shirt with the tie. I probably would have gone stir crazy if it wasn't for Godfather.
How was Steven Richards to work with?
See, Richard's great. I think he's crazy. I think he's a lunatic. But he's a great guy. He's always fun to work with. I know him. I know that Stevie Richards and some of the talent that were backstage, they butted heads a few times, but I never had issues with Stevie Richards. I always liked the guy. Good dude, and was never easily offended either. So I could take pot shots at him, and he'd throw pot shots back at me, and we laugh about it after. That was a good one. Whatever. He was always a good dude. Good dude.
When you say he's crazy, in what way is he crazy?
Man. Well, he's one of those very eccentric guys that I don't know if he sleeps. He's one of those guys that I believe can be a workaholic too. He's outside of the norm when it comes to work ethic. The guy works hard. No matter if you like him or if you don't like him, no one can ever take away his work ethic. I've watched that guy go from an okay shaped guy. He was in okay shape, but he just looked like the boy next door, to getting absolutely shredded and staying that way. And he's one of those guys that when he sets his mind to something, he doesn't stop. He gets possessed by it. He sets a goal and he does not stop trying to achieve that goal. And that's something that I admire in humans. I admire humans that can set goals and they don't care what stands in front of them. They're going to work their asses off to meet that goal. And that's always something I look to for inspiration. So Stevie Richards, I mean, he's crazy in the sense that his work ethic is what I would consider crazy. He doesn't stop. He keeps going until he reaches whatever it is he's trying to achieve.
And what about Ivory? She seemed like a sweetheart.
Ivory is a sweetheart. Yeah, she was always really cool, man. Never a bad thing to say about Ivory, man. She was a hard worker, tough as an. I watched Stevie Richards. We were in the ring one day, and everybody's just goofing around doing their thing. And Stevie and Ivory started like kind of shooting on each other a little bit. And at first I go, oh, we've got a little Greco-Roman going on here. And all of a sudden I turned around and I see Stevie Richards with Ivory way up in the air and just spine busters or slams her through the mat. And her legs went ping. And Stevie Richards was right on top of her in the middle of her legs. And she hit so hard that I was like, oh my God, what the hell? And she didn't stop either. She didn't sell it. She kept on going. And I mean, he drove her through the mat. Ivory is tough as they come, man. She's tough as nails. That's one thing I think a lot of people look at Ivory and go, oh, she's a pretty woman. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. I think Ivory's beauty may have distracted from the fact that's one tough bitch right there. I mean, she was tough. Uh, just the fact that she no-sold that massive spine buster from Stevie Richards was impressive, and kept on going too. They kept rolling around afterwards. It was pretty impressive.
And of course, Bull Buchanan was also part of that. A lot of people forget. Why didn't he ever make it further? He had a top body, but we never really heard from him after that.
Yeah, it's a good question. Bo Buchanan was a great guy too, man. He was a decent worker. I wouldn't say he was the best worker in the world, but yeah, he had a great look. I think they could have done a lot with him. Uh, I don't know. I don't know why WWE didn't use him. I think it depends on who's on the writing staff. If you got guys that are on the writing staff, I mean, they're all looking at talent as well and seeing who they could create storylines for. And I think when they looked at Bull Buchanan, I think they kind of gave him more of the. It kind of reminds me of the boy next door. It's all jacked. And can you make money with the boy next door? Maybe, but I can't think of ways you can do it because who's going to pay really to see the boy next door? You want to see something that's um, different, something that's intriguing, something that's now that's not to say they couldn't have, but I think he would definitely have had to have changed something that would have made him stand out. I think that's what the issue was. He didn't stand out from this small pond of talent that's invested in talent. It was hard for him to stand out and really be something that was different because he had the body, he had the looks, he had decent, basic good wrestling skills that you could definitely get by with, and he was a hard worker. So it was a matter of coming up with something that would have been captivating for Bull Buchanan, and that never happened. No one ever came up with something that would have been captivating for the fans. Ultimately, it's what the fans, you're trying to separate the fans from their money, and you want them to feel satisfied that they did give you the money after they're done watching whatever it is they're watching. And I don't know if Bull Buchanan would have satisfied the fans being just Bull Buchanan. I think he would have needed to come up with something quite a bit different.
Now he looks like a guy, I don't know him personally, that may have taken some performance enhancing stuff here or there. What's your views on WWE? I guess they allow testosterone replacement therapy and possibly human growth hormone now, but they steroids in general are banned, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of those things where um, it's a private company. They can make any rules they want. And, because it's a private company, I don't have to agree with the rules. I'll support them making the rules they want. That's just the way it is. It's their company. If it was my company, I can tell you what I would do. I would definitely have a wellness program, but I wouldn't ban steroids. I definitely wouldn't ban pot. Um, but I'd also be open with the guys and say, hey, listen, um, if you are wanting to take these performance enhancing drugs and you think that's going to make this company money, and we can make that happen, then let's get you some of the best doctors that we can afford to make sure you're doing it safely. To me, government again has demonized something that when a human being decides they want to do something that's not going to harm anyone else, they should be allowed to do it. They should have the freedom and the liberty to do it. And I think the rest of us, and of course, they're going to do things that are going to benefit them or that they think are going to benefit them. They're not going to do something they know is not going to benefit them. I don't think any human in the world would do that. So if somebody says, oh, I want to have a bodybuilder-like physique because I want to go compete on a stage somewhere, well, hey, in order to get a bodybuilder physique, you need to use steroids. And I think criminalizing that or banning steroids, it's not going to stop steroids, number one. And number two, it makes it more dangerous because now you're relying on the black market to supply those steroids, and they're not getting the medical help that maybe people want, need, and desire. And so I think being more free and more liberty, yes, hey, that guy uses steroids. He's under professional medical care and he makes money doing with what he's doing. he made that choice. Let's enjoy what he's created for himself. You know, fans of bodybuilding, and I'm one of them. I don't want to go to a bodybuilding show and watch the boy next door sit there with his skinny ass little 6-pack. I want to see guys that are jacked and freakish looking, and that takes steroids to do. I would prefer it if they did it under medical supervision and not rely on dirty black market steroids. But most people think that's cheating or whatever. And I'm all for sports that want to go completely natural. We showcase natural athletes. We test them. We make sure that they're on nothing but just natural foods or whatever. And then you can have a competing company that says, hey, our guys do engage in performance enhancing drugs, and let the customers decide which product they want to view. And quite frankly, I'd probably go to the steroid bodybuilding show to watch those guys. And I don't think many people would disagree with me going over to that one to spend my money.
Now, I'm not asking you this from personal experience, but because you wrestled in Mexico extensively, is it true that you could just walk into a pharmacy at Mexico and basically ask for whatever steroids you want and just get
Oh yeah,
them?
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I did it. I did it. It was one of those things where not all pharmacies, but if you go to 5 of them, you'll find one that'll be like, yeah, sure. I had one when I went to get some testosterone, and I walked in and said, "Hey, do you guys have vials of testosterone?" And they were like, "You need a prescription." And I showed him $20 US, and he goes, "That's good enough." So it
That's
is what
funny.
it is. You know what I mean?
Because I do remember in Puerto Rico, you could get, I've never been a pain pill guy, but you could get as many pain pills as you want there without a prescription.
Yeah,
And
somas as well were a big thing down in Puerto Rico. Um, those pain pills, man, man, those things are bad news. They've killed a lot of our friends, man. And obviously, being an anarchist, I would never want opiates banned, because the reality is they kill pain very, very effectively. Um, but I think a wise way to use them is only for very, very short term, because you go even a little longer than just short term, your body quickly becomes addicted to that stuff. And once you have an addiction to opiates, it's horrendous to try and get off. I got, I took them for 3 months straight after I got 6 pins in my shoulder back in 2009. And it was 2007 when I got the 6 pins. I'm sorry, I left WWE in 2009. But 2007, I had 6 pins in my shoulder, and I took those pain pills every day, 3 times a day for 3 months while I was locked in a brace. And I was only getting an hour of sleep a night, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I had to sleep in a recliner. It was just constant throbbing from those 6 pins in my shoulder. And the pain pills dulled the pain enough to where it made it bearable, and I could get a few minutes of sleep here and a few minutes of sleep there. At the end of 3 months, I woke up in the recliner one morning and I went, whoa, I slept all night. That's incredible. I hadn't slept all night in 3 months. And then I started thinking, I don't feel any more throbbing in my shoulder. The pain went away. It feels like somebody just flipped a switch. And finally the pain went away and I slept all night. So I didn't take a pill that day. And the very next day, I was only on for 3 months. The very next day, I was in the fetal position, ice cold, but covered in sweat. And of course, coming out both ends. And that lasted for 2 weeks, man, those withdrawals. And it was one of the most horrific times of my life. I feel so deeply for people that are going through opiate withdrawals, man. And I completely understand how it's very difficult to go through those withdrawals and not just take that one pill just to end the withdrawals for a day. And of course, once you take that pill to end the withdrawals, you're starting them all over again. And and of course, if you can't get through the withdrawals, that's really where the addiction is. I think a lot of people get addicted because it kills the pain and it does give them euphoria. But after a while, everybody starts to feel, okay, I'm addicted to these things. I don't want to take them. But if I stop taking them, I get deathly ill. And I think it's the fear of getting deathly ill that just keeps people taking them. I don't want to go through withdrawals today. I'll do it next week. I don't want to go through, they just keep kicking the can down the road. And of course, we all see where that leads. It's yeah. If I get pain, I just smoke a joint now, and I'm not going to say pot kills pain at all. It does dull it down, but what it does do very effectively, it changes your perception of pain. You don't care that it's painful, and the good thing with that is you can still feel the pain, so you can reduce your range of motion, so you're not causing more damage because you can feel the pain. With opiates, it kills the pain so much that you start, your range of motion just goes right back to normal, and now you're causing more damage. So I think there's a benefit to pot on many different levels, and not so many benefits to opiates.
For the shoulder surgery, was that an overuse injury that it just piled up, or was that something directly from a match?
So it's one of those things where this is how the doctor described it to me. How it happened, I was in Europe. We were doing I believe it was a 3-week tour in Europe, and I took just a normal flat back bump like I've done a million times beforehand, and I felt my shoulder go pop, pop. First time it's ever done that. Never had an issue with my shoulders. When it went out, when it came back in, it sliced all the tendons. And so when I got back to the States and I went to Dr. Maddox out here in Glendale, Arizona, they sent me for an MRI, and he started to tell me that years of doing heavy weights behind my neck for military press frayed the tendons in my shoulders. And it frayed it so much that they were all hanging on by literally a string, which I knew I had a little bit of ache and pain in my shoulder, but it never felt out of the ordinary. But apparently when it went out and came back in again, it was already, all those tendons were only holding on by a thread. And that was just enough to pop them all off. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what I was told by Dr. Maddox. And so military presses behind the neck, maybe not so good for your shoulder tendons.
Have
He said,
you known anyone
dumbbells.
that's
He said I should use dumbbells and do them to the front. And I did them to the front as well, but he says don't do them to the back anymore. And so I stopped doing them to the back.
I know they've got a stem cell therapy place in Phoenix. Do you know any wrestlers or anyone personally that's had that? Because I've heard it's been helping some wrestlers without surgery.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it too deeply. I know RVD's had the stem cell therapy done. Ken Shamrock has. Um, I'm not sure exactly what it does or how it does it. It's something I'm definitely interested in learning about, though, for sure. They seem to have gotten decent results from it. So I heard Kevin Nash. I haven't talked to Nash about it, but I heard he was also, or he also got
Yeah.
stem cell therapy.
I believe he had it done in Phoenix too. I see, and Dan Severin too, who also
Yeah,
lives in
I saw Dan Severn. Dan Severn saw him. What was it? He came by the shop about a year ago, I guess. And he's in the CBD business now, and
yeah.
he's really good with it. Yeah,
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 I never would have expected him to join the club. Even Bob Backlund. I've seen a news report. Bob Backlund takes CBD before he works out now.
yeah. It's a great cannabinoid, but yeah, you're right. I never, ever, ever would have imagined that Mr. Straight Laced himself, Dan Severn, would get involved in the CBD industry. But I mean, facts are facts. You can only ignore facts for so long. And cannabis has some phenomenal medicinal properties to it. CBD is just one of those. And people can demonize cannabis all they want, but that plant is probably one. Well, no, not probably. It is the most useful plant mankind has available to them. And it's only a matter of time before I think somebody as straight laced as Dan Severn finally, let's face it, that guy's straight laced as straight laced can be. And
Yeah.
for him to come out and say CBD is a great product, it's natural, non toxic, and it's a phenomenal anti inflammatory. For him to come out and say that, it's inspiring because you start to see people that would have been anti years ago. And now they're starting to accept the facts for what they are. And now they're promoting those facts to others as well. And the facts are CBD is a phenomenal anti-inflammatory. and it's great for a lot of different conditions. And better than anything the pharmaceutical companies come up with for anti-inflammatories, that's for sure.
Now, when you say anti-inflammatories, is that from rubbing it directly on the infected area or just taking it in however you're going to take it?
Both, both. Whether you take it internally or you turn it into a cream or a pain rub, the cannabinoids will attach to CB1 and CB2 receptors, and that's where the anti-inflammatory magic happens. And you got those cannabinoid receptors all throughout your body. It's in your skin, your eyes, everywhere. There's obviously more concentrations in your brain and in your chest, but it's everywhere. And so when you can stimulate your own endocannabinoid system with cannabinoids like CBD, there are a lot of health benefits that can be experienced from that.
Well, thanks a lot for talking to us. I really appreciate you answering all of the questions and giving such detailed answers. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the viewers before we close off here?
Yeah, man, I'd like to say keep being huge wrestling fans. Keep supporting the wrestlers out there because the more you support them, the better the content they're going to create. And let's abolish government. Can we all please get together and abolish government? We're human beings. We can all interact with each other without having a ruling class telling us what we can and cannot do. And let's abolish this extortion racket called taxation. Let's just get rid of it.
And I can't close this off without getting your catchphrase.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you ready for this?
Yes.
All right, here we go. It's been a minute. Hello, ladies.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.